Hello and welcome to week 2 of live on Mondays at 3 p.m. Central in True Alignment Academy. I am so excited to be here again with you today. And we are going to talk today about how we process emotions and why you're not broken. I am so excited to bring this to you. If you are joining me live, please put hashtag live. And if you're here for the replay, let me know. It will be amazing. If you don't know me, my name's Natalie. I run True Alignment Academy out of Houston, Texas. And it is my passion and my purpose to heal the healer and create awareness and help you to find your own state of healing. I have been a registered nurse for almost 16 years, and I can tell you that the one thing that I never learned was how to process emotions. I have done my own healing work and created a state of healing that is actually absolute true freedom. True freedom, and I am living a life I never thought was even possible. If you missed last week's live, go back and watch it. It was amazing. And I talked to you about how we process information and the reticular activating system, right? And what is trauma? Because trauma is not the event. As traumatic as the event may be, trauma is what's stored in our body and who we decide we are or the world is after that event. And from that, we create a lens in which we see the world, and then we recreate our world to match what's been processed and to match what's been programmed in our subconscious mind. And that's why we continue the patterns over and over and over again, right? Because 96% of everything that we do is controlled by the subconscious mind. And we create these patterns over and over because of this. You know, we continue to yell at our kids, or we do things that we're like, I'm never going to do what my parents did, but we find ourselves doing those same patterns. We find ourselves in the same relationships, right? In the same job environments that we're trying to run away from, and just keep recreating those patterns. So today, what I want to talk to you about is what makes up the reticular activating system. Which is the filing system for the unconscious mind. So the way that we process information, we take it on with our eyes. And what we think happens is that it goes into, we take it on, it goes into our frontal lobe, our logic thinking brain, and then we store it away in our subconscious as a memory. But that's not what happens at all. What happens is we see the picture, we take it on with our eyes, it goes straight to the unconscious mind and gets filed through this reticular activating system, which I spoke about in depth last week. So go watch that live if you haven't yet. And this filing system is what holds all of our events, traumatic events, all of our belief systems, our emotions, which we're going to talk about today, our programming, our parental programming, societal programming, religious programming, environmental programming, all the programming that you've had in nursing or healthcare where you've been, all of that. So it gets filtered through all that. And then we delete, generalize, and distort that information to match what is in our programming in our subconscious mind. And that's what we bring around to the frontal lobe and we call truth, this distorted truth, right? So if you are like anything like me, my entire life, what I've been taught is that emotions are only there as a nuisance, right? That you need to just shove them down because that's only what's safe. Whenever I first started nursing, I can remember that I was just like an open book for those emotions, right? My compassion, my ability to feel with patients and feel with families and be present with them was there. And slowly over time, it was no longer safe to be able to feel those emotions. It was too much. right? To be able to hold their hands and feel my own emotion. And so what I did was I shoved it down and shoved it down and shoved it down. And it bottles up, right? And it gets worse and worse and worse. And so then we get into the coping mechanisms and the numbing techniques, because we just can't handle all of this that's been pushed down for so long. And that's why it was so hard for me to even take a vacation or have any downtime whatsoever, because everything that had been bottled up and pushed down for so long exploded. And so I was living a life of completely out of my control in this realm, because everything was a reaction, right? Everything triggered me, and then immediately I would just blow up, because all of this had been pushed down for so long. And then don't even get me started about the guilt and the shame that came with all that. And we're going to get into that in a minute. But if you are having anxiety or depression or guilt and shame or intense grief, right? First of all, I want you to know that you are not your emotion. You have emotions, but you are not depressed. You are not anxious. You feel depressed. You feel anxious, right? But you are not your emotions. Emotions come in waves. And second, I want you to know that this is how the brain works. And so we tend to have a lot of guilt and shame about how we're feeling. Hi, Stacy. I'm so glad that you've made it. We have a lot of guilt and shame about the way that we feel, right? But this is how the brain works, and that's what I'm going to get into today. So we have 4 major emotions, and they are stored in the subconscious mind in the reticular activating system in something called a gestalt. And a gestalt is like, it's like a water tower, right? And so I'm going to draw it out for you. Still haven't gotten this up on the wall. I will eventually. All right, so you have these 4 major emotions. So we have anger, and then we have sadness, fear and anxiety, and then we have guilt. And they're stored, I don't even think you can see this, hold on. Okay, here we go. In these gestalts, in the reticular activating system, in the brain, in the unconscious mind, right? Where everything is filtered through. And as you live your life and you come into contact with influences in your life, it's going to trigger these emotions, and these bags are going to start to fill up. And so as they fill up, for instance, the bags don't just start new every time that you get a new emotion. So let's say at 2 years old, dad makes you angry and it fills up a little bit. And then at 6 years old, somebody calls you a name on the playground and it fills up a little bit more. And then you're a teenager. We know everyone makes us angry at 17. And you aren't allowed to go somewhere, and your mom throws down the hammer and fills up a little more. And then at 30, you get a divorce, right? And that makes you angry and it fills up. And this is a perfect example of what happens whenever your gestalt gets full. At 40, you're on the road and someone cuts you off and it fills up all the way. And what happens? Road rage, right? Because whenever we get to this top emotion, anger turns into rage, this ineffective emotion. And we respond in the same way than when we first felt this emotion. So road rage, you take out your gun and someone takes out their gun and they shoot the person that cut them off on the road. That's not a 40-year-old response, right? That's not a logical response, right? They reverted back to 2 years old when someone makes them angry and they slap them in the face. You don't start over with your reactions. This is what happens. You react in the moment. So when you pushed it down and it's been there for so long and your gestalt fills up, you react to the trigger based on the first time you ever felt it. So what happens is sadness turns into depression. Fear and anxiety turns into anxiety attacks, which I can tell you I relate to very much. I did. And guilt turns into shame. Now, when you're in these ineffective emotions, rage, depression, anxiety attacks, and shame, what happens is your frontal lobe shuts down. Your frontal lobe shuts down, and your frontal lobe is your logical brain, your thinking brain, right? And so you're filled with this rage and you're acting totally out of your subconscious, which holds, again, all your programming, all your belief systems. It's like you're on autopilot. And so if you live in these ineffective emotions, effectively, you have no control over your life. You are on autopilot based on all of your programming and all of your events and all of your trauma and who you decided you were after those events. And because we've never learned how to process these emotions, and we've never learned how to mature our emotions, because I guarantee you I was never taught any of this. All I knew that it wasn't safe to feel my emotions. We show up to life with full gestalts. And we show up to life already at our maxed out, right? Already. And so therefore, whenever problems come, we have no ability to actually use our frontal lobe, our logical brain, our thinking brain, the part of our brain that makes sense of everything. And we go back to that age and act out. Goodness. This is why I got to get it up on the wall. Sorry. And act out at that age that we first felt the emotion, right? Why do we have emotions in the first place? Our emotions are actually for us. They are here to communicate with us, not our thoughts. What happens is we get a thought. The thought releases hormones that release emotions that continue into another thought. So if we're going to get a hold of anything, we've got to figure out what's in here and how we use it, right? We've got to figure that out. So in addition to showing up in our lives as rage, depression, anxiety, and shame, the other part of this is emotions can make us sick, especially whenever we bottle them up and we push them down and we push them down, because all our trauma lives in our cells. And emotions, we know that hormones, when certain emotions are felt, the fight or flight goes off, cortisone's released, right? The adrenaline, all of that. And that just sits in our body and it makes us sick, especially whenever we are filled up with guilt and shame, which I can tell you I have operated most of my life out of guilt and shame. And that's why most people filled with trauma end up with all types of autoimmune disorders. If you are saying, I don't have any energy, I'm at the end of my ropes, like I can't handle one more thing. I can't go into work and handle one more death. Like I just can't take one more thing on in my life or I'm going to explode. It's because of this. It's because you are full. Your gestalts are full. And you have no emotional availability when life hands you whatever it's going to, because we know that life will, right? Things happen. That's just life. But when you don't have any emotional availability, this is what happens, and you get sick, or both. But when we properly learn how to regulate our emotions, we can create that emotional availability so that when life happens, we can show up and handle it. And we can continue to act out our life with the gifts that God's given us, right? Instead of being in this reaction mode where we really have no control and we act like 2-year-olds or 4-year-olds, right? And our frontal lobe shuts down. And so when we do act like a 2-year-old or a 4-year-old, right? And we come home after working 3/12s and we're exhausted and our kid just wants to love on us or play with us and we yell at them, reverting back to that age and act with that behavior, what happens? It's like immediately we get the guilt and shame, right? And we hold that. And over and over and over. I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I did that. It's like you get that nauseousness in the pit of your stomach. Or you process your day over and over and over again if a patient dies, right? Or if you didn't take that next step in your business, or if you didn't get your to-do list done, and the guilt and shame just eats you alive. And I don't know if you saw my post today, but we hold energy in our body and our emotions, our energy, and it vibrates. And guilt is on a level 30 and shame is on a level 20, and the body starts to die at level 25. So literally, if we are holding all of that guilt and shame inside of us, it's killing us. It's killing us. And it feels that way. I can tell you it felt that way for me. I had no capacity to hold any joy because of the amount of guilt and shame I had just eating me alive. I was desperate for someone to take it away, right? And this is where it starts with you. Only you can really heal you. No one is going to come save you except for yourself. And that's the beauty of these tools in my program, I'm telling you. Because once you do that, no one can ever take it away from you when you create your own state of healing. Overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. I think that was whenever anyone asked me how I was, I either said I was busy or I was overwhelmed. What does that mean, overwhelm? Overwhelm is actually an umbrella of emotions. Why do we use overwhelm so much? It's because we have never, number one, wanted to feel our emotions at all or acknowledge them. And so we've never learned how to communicate with our emotions. I can tell you that I saw a list recently of all the different emotions we had, and it was a first for me because that's how long that I have chosen to shove them away and not deal with them, right? They scared me. But overwhelm is an umbrella of emotion. Why do we shove emotion down in the first place? We don't know what to do with them, right? It's not safe for us to feel them. It's painful. We don't know how to regulate them. Once I started crying, I guarantee you, hello, Lynn, thank you so much for showing up. Once I watched a sad movie, that was it. Like once I opened that water tower, that was it. I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop crying. I never allowed myself to cry. So we don't know how to feel them safely. We don't know how to regulate them. We don't know what to do with them, and we don't even know what they're here for. That's why we shove them down, but they're here to support us. These emotions are coming up for healing. There's a reason why we have them. So what do we need to do about it? What do we need to do about it? These emotions. First, in order to effectively process these emotions, we have to practice feeling our feelings and to know what they feel like in our body. Because if we don't know what they feel like in our body, how will we ever know when they come up? Right? My overwhelm that I blanketed everything in my entire life for the first 36 years, I can tell you what it felt like. It felt like death, right? My entire body felt like I wanted to jump out of it. And that's why I went to every numbing technique. That's why I worked the way I did. That's why I found all my coping mechanisms. So we have to actually feel our feelings. Is it scary? Yes. To get in touch with our body? Yeah, it is. And figure out what's on the other side of the emotions. And this is where the brave part comes in, of healing and being brave enough. And I'll tell you that most people aren't ready. You have to be ready for that, to be able to see what's on the other side of those emotions. And so that's why I come to you, and I will continue coming to you every week, so that hopefully I can give you the tools to create that emotional availability within yourself, so that when you're ready, we can go to the root, right? The influences, the people, the event that created the emotions, that created the beliefs in the first place, and we could hit it at the root and heal it once and for all. But you have to be ready, and it takes a lot of bravery to get there. So how do we communicate with our emotions? First of all, I want to tell you that communicating with yourself, we do it every day, but most of the time not on a level of awareness or with any intention. And being able to communicate with yourself is what creates self-trust. And that was something that I was missing most of my life. What does that even look like? Someone told me once to advocate for myself, and I said, what does that even mean? What do you mean advocate for myself? I had no trust in anything that I did. Hence, living life by everyone else's playbook, right? Any major decision I had to make, what would you do? What would you do? Right? Second guessing everything that I did. I would go home after a day of work or working in the business, and I would second guess everything that I did. Did I do that right? What would they do? There was no self-trust. There was no self-trust. I couldn't make any decisions, and I had no confidence. Only whenever you have self-trust and self-love can you actually stand in your own truth and trust everything that you do. It starts with self-trust. And communicating with your emotions is one step to that. Getting that self-trust. So how do we feel them? Get in touch with our body. And this is how you do it. I'm going to walk you through it. So when an emotion comes up, what am I feeling? If you don't know what you're feeling, that's okay. Overwhelm, because I tell you, the more that you practice this and the more it creates self-trust, the more you're going to be able to identify what it is that you're actually feeling. So what am I feeling? If it's overwhelmed, fine. Where do you feel it in your body? This is huge. This is the link that's missing with everything about emotions and what everyone talks about emotions, because our emotions are connected to our body. It all works. This is how the brain works. This is how the nervous system works. Where am I feeling it in my body? And allow yourself to be filled up with that feeling. And sometimes at first, this can only be tolerated for a little bit of time, and that's okay. It will get easier. But if you allow your emotions to be felt, it's kind of like a bubble. When you pop them, they go away. If you don't, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And they will come back. Most of the time, whenever it's really inconvenient. And you'll be right back at that 2-year-old in that reactionary mode on the people you love most, and your kids, and your spouse, right? So where do I feel it in my body? I feel it in my chest. I feel like I can't breathe. Okay. Allow yourself to feel the emotion. And it's there to serve you, so honor it. Thank you for showing up today. I honor you for showing up today. I know that you're here for me. I know that you're here to support me, right? And then ask it what it has to say to you. Because again, why are our emotions here in the first place? To communicate with you. And it will either tell you to do something. So again, our emotions are here to serve us. If we went and screamed at our husband because we were at our full gestalt, then guilt comes as a gift for us to say, oh, you know what, I probably shouldn't have done that. Let me go apologize. But if we're so stuck in our shame spiral that we can never get to the guilt before it, and all we do is shame, 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 then we don't have that emotional availability to have the communication to effectively live our life, right? And make those decisions, those good decisions. Ask it what it has to say to you. And it'll either tell you to go do something, or it's going to start emptying out in pain, right? And so also, if you are in a position where you're at work and you don't have a lot of time to be able to communicate with that emotion, what you can do is run to the bathroom, which I know for nurses, it's pretty difficult to get to the bathroom, right? Run to the Pyxis room, wherever you can, to the supply room, pull up the emotion. And this is what truly creates that self-trust. I honor you for showing up, anxiety. I know you're here to communicate with me. I know you're here to support me, but right now I just can't. Tonight at 8:00 p.m., I will come back and I will figure out what you want to say to me. And then make sure you go back at 8 p.m. to communicate with that emotion, to get the message, your highest inner wisdom, right? What it's trying to tell you, what it's trying to communicate with you. And make sure that you go back. Emotions is one of the hardest things that no one could help me with, right? I continued to take prescription after prescription and numb, and no one ever taught me that my emotions were actually here to serve me. And so I'm telling you, you are not broken. You are not broken. You just don't know how this works yet. But when you can figure out how this works and how to process your emotions and to heal every single part of you, the freedom that I feel, the peace that I never knew I could feel, the joy that has replaced all of that pain, I want that for you too. And it's possible, and I'm here to give you hope. Borrow mine if you have to. You know, and If this is something that you're struggling with, reach out to me. I would love to talk to you about it. But start to communicate with your emotions. They are here to serve you. Join me next week, Monday, 3 p.m. Central. Have a great week.